Are they feeling a lack of confidence and in what they're able to do to you? And are they getting exhausted? If this is the case, man, start taking over the match. This is the time to increase the pace, take the match to them, finish the fight, or just dominate them and hold them in positions until the fight's over, right?
What's the most efficient path to victory against this particular opponent?
Dropping off for the choke here. We could see the finish. It's looking tight. Tight Delbra.
Hey guys, what's up? This is Matt Kwan from the Essential Jiu Jitsu Podcast. The Essential Jiu Jitsu Podcast is everything you need to know about Jiu Jitsu. This week we are discussing the habits of highly effective grapplers. How can we adopt some of these habits, incorporate them into our own game, and what are the things that are common with people who are successful in jiu-jitsu and effective on the mats. Before we do that, I'd like to ask you to like, share, subscribe to the show, leave comments in the comment sections. It really helps my algorithm. If you want to support or contact the show, check out the links below. So first thing we're going to talk about when we discuss habits of highly effective grapplers is going to be the idea of becoming a good uke. And if you don't know what an uke is, it is the Japanese term that describes somebody who is receiving a technique. So Tori is the person who is giving the technique. Okay, when two people are drilling, Tori is giving the technique, uke receiving the technique. But just because you're the uke and it's not your turn to execute the technique, that doesn't mean that you can't use that opportunity to grow. In fact, the uke has a lot of good responsibilities. I believe me and my brother have discussed this on the BJJ Mental Models podcast before, and it takes time to become a good uke. Common mistakes from ukes would be like giving too much resistance and not letting the person that is demonstrating the technique do the technique, right? This is one of the most frustrating things when you ask someone to be your uke, and as you're trying to demonstrate a technique in front of everyone, they start shutting you down. And it makes you look like a complete ass. It makes you look like the techniques don't work. And sometimes you have to tell them right then and there, hey, can you stop resisting the technique because it's not working? I know you can shut down the technique. Just because it's a technique doesn't mean that there's no solution for the technique or there's no counter for the technique. There's always a solution or a counter or a way to stop or stifle the technique. But being a good uke, I always tell the kids when they're drilling, the uke, their job in a nutshell is make Tori look good, okay, while giving intelligent responses. So I always tell them, you know, when you're becoming an uke, Tori can't get good at the technique if uke is being an idiot. If uke just lies there like a limp noodle and doesn't give any kind of responses or any kind of stance or posture that will actually be realistic to the situation, then the technique can't even be done, okay? And if uke is too rigid and defensive and doesn't let the technique happen, then obviously nothing can happen. So there's a fine line between rigidity and softness that the uke needs. In terms of managing tension, you want to be somewhere in the middle where you're not too rigid and not too soft. But I think what's really important when we're discussing being good uke, in terms of what makes an uke actually effective, is the idea of giving intelligent responses. I always say to my guys, okay, give intelligent responses. That doesn't mean be overly aggressive or overly strong. It means the responses that you're going to give are relative to the situation. So let's say we're doing guard passing drills. Person on top is doing like Toriandos and creating angles. Okay, uke needs to be in the game. They need to be focusing and getting their frames back constantly. Now, that being said, we might be able to tell the uke, okay, I want you to give frames like 50%, meaning, okay, now the top player is basically going to be able to complete the task or complete the technique, and they're not going to get completely shut down. But what if uke's job is to apply their resistance 80 or 90%? That means we're almost in a full-on live situation, and uke kind of needs to be able to increase and decrease resistance as needed, depending on the goals, and also work with constraints. So sometimes uke, your job will be to just use intelligent responses just to frame. Okay, we'll say like uke is not allowed to grab and grip and off balance. Uke can only frame, but then other times uke will be allowed to grip, will be allowed to off balance. And depending on whatever constraints you work, let's say you're using like a live situation or an ecological approach situation, the uke needs to be able to add constraints and take away constraints at will, depending on the exercise. So there is a lot of responsibilities for being a good uke. And I think it's important when you have beginners and kids to always reiterate the expectations of the uke. Okay, as the instructor, you should be making sure that everyone kind of knows how to make each other look good, how to make the techniques be effective, and give a proper level of resistance so that everyone gets good training. And again, a good uke also looks at Tori's turn to do the technique as an opportunity for them to improve themselves. So many times when you see beginners or kids and it's time for the other person to do the technique, uke kind of turns the lights off and just waits for their turn. And so let's say you're doing like a closed guard technique and uke is in the closed guard, you'll always see uke like fall over or just lose their stance. And if as a coach, you're not reminding them, hey, you got to keep a good stance, it's kind of understandable why they would do that. We need someone to train us to become an uke. And over time, if you become a very good uke, people will always want to drill with you. People will always want to work with you. It's a very valuable skill to become a good uke. And it's part of training that a lot of people don't really discuss too much, right? So the uke really should strive to improve not only their partner, Tori, not only Tori's technique, but also their own. And just look at being an uke as an opportunity for both perspectives, from uke and Tori's perspective, to improve. All right, number 2, get along with people. I'm guilty of not getting along with everyone. I'm pretty hot-headed. I'm overly aggressive at times, especially in social media situations. But in person, I feel like I'm a deer. I'm lovely to be around. I always try to tell people, hey, you can always approach me with criticism, even if you're asking me questions about the program. If you come up to me and say, hey, I don't like what we're doing, or hey, I had a question about this method or whatever, like, guys, just because I'm the gym owner, just because I'm a black belt, doesn't mean that I am not. I'm not immune to scrutiny. Okay, I should be held to high standards, and I appreciate all criticisms and comments. Okay, my ego's not so big that I never like to be questioned, as long as it's done in a respectful way. So get along with people in the gym. Okay, you're going to be seeing these people a lot. Generally, if you're consistently training, hell, you might even see these people more than some of your own family members, okay? For me, I'm seeing people in the gym every day, basically. I take Saturday off. That's my day to be with my family and whatever, but every other day I'm in the gym, I'm training, and I'm seeing these people a lot. So if you're the kind of guy that goes into a gym and you start shit with people, or you're rough around the edges, or you're just not friendly, you're not outgoing, you're introverted and you don't want to help other people or make relationships with people, you're just naturally going to fall into kind of an isolated state. So I think it's really important to get along with people and try and make things as comfortable and as non-awkward as you can. Okay. And this goes in every aspect of life. As a general rule, people that you surround yourself with, whether it's through work or your family or at jiu-jitsu or whatever, like, you want to get along with them and have share a common goal. Okay, I'm here to help you. You're here to help me. I care about your development, etc. So be there for your team, and investing in your teammates will really help you reach the next level. So really be there for your team and invest in your teammates, and that will help you all reach that'll help you all reach the next level. Understand that when you invest in your team, that having more advanced training partners and helping everyone get better is a really valuable thing for everyone. It's valuable for the academy, all the training partners, and yourself included. So a lot of people will go into jiu-jitsu and they'll kind of go to class just to improve their own game, especially like competitors. I find competitors are on a whole, they're pretty selfish people for the most part. But if you're there and you're there to help everyone, not just yourself improve, it's an investment that over time makes a lot of sense, because these people all improve with you. And when everyone improves in the room, it gives you a chance to push yourself to the next level. And it's sort of like a perpetual cycle of growth, right? Everyone gets better, and this is good for everyone. If you are the type of person to cause drama, you're likely to stand out in kind of a negative way. And like I said, you will isolate yourself, which is not really what we want. So investing in training partners, you will get better. They will get better. give back to your team and build relationships with the people, they will remember you in a positive way. If you invest in people and, let's say you're a senior rank and there's someone in the room who has a question and they come up to you like, are they owed your time? No, you could be like, hey, can we do a private lesson? You could say that, although I'm not a big fan of that, but you could say that because it is fair. Your time is it's valuable for sure. Or you could say, yeah, like I got 5 minutes, I can show you something. Over time, you do this enough times, people will remember that. And it adds up because you invested in them, you gave them time, you gave them your knowledge, and now they can pay that forward. They will also feel, okay, well, this senior rank gave me their time and their knowledge. I want to pay that forward to the next generation. I want to be generous as well. And creating that room where everyone's generous and willing to give to each other and give more to the whole room is, I think, that's kind of an ideal situation. And this over time can really directly affect the jiu-jitsu in your area. Not just your gym, but it kind of affects the culture of the community in your area with jiu-jitsu. And just, I find it's just good vibes all around when you have this kind of positive, generous outlook in jiu-jitsu. All right, we're going to talk a little bit more about mechanics now for becoming an effective grappler. So here are some habits you can create. The first one we're going to talk about is develop a strong stance. Okay. And what is a stance? A stance is just a way that you hold your body positioning regardless of the situation. So whether you're on the bottom, whether you're on the top, whether it's standing versus standing, there's always kind of like an ideal stance in jiu-jitsu. And it kind of relates back to posture, structure, base, the alignment concept. Always want to be in base so you can exert force and absorb force. You always want to have good posture so that your spine is strong and aligned. And you always want to have good limb positioning so that your partner can't, expose you in different ways. So having a good stance is one of the most valuable things that any new player can do, especially in the standing position, because in the standing position, when you don't know any moves at all and you don't know how to get in on a single leg or whatever, one of the best things you can do, the most low-hanging fruit that a beginner can do is think about how are they going to have their stance in a standing position. When you're in a good stance, in any situation, your opponent's going to have a difficult time attacking you successfully. So really think, whatever your situation you're in, what kind of positioning should my body be in? What positioning should my limbs have? Am I in base? Is my partner controlling my spine? Things like that. It does take time to develop a good stance, but again, that's one of the main focuses that I give to beginners and kids. And then ideally, being able to like move in your stance, like creating motion while you're maintaining your stance, that's really, really important. So as you're moving in multiple directions, let's say, for example, in the standing position, while you're moving in multiple directions, you're still able to maintain your stance. Like I said, what is a good stance? There isn't really one good stance, but a good stance is relative to your goals. So if you're on the bottom position, your stance is obviously going to be different than if you're in the standing position. If you're in the top pinning position, your stance is different from a standing position. Okay. It's relative to your goals at the time, and understand that your stance also, just because you're standing, there is no one good standing stance. There's many stances you could take from the standing position. You could be in an upright stance. You could be in a semi-crouch stance, which is, I would say, most common in jiu-jitsu. And you could be in a super low crouch stance. Usually, I'm going to base my stance on my partner's stance. So the first thing I do when I'm rolling is I'm assessing what my partner's stance is. And then from there, I can have a better idea as to what I should do. So for example, let's say I'm starting in the standing position. I come out and I don't know, maybe I come from a judo background where tackles and leg grabs are not really a huge part of my game, which they should be. But my partner is taking a super low stance. So there's a huge difference in levels. It makes no sense for me to approach my partner with a super tall stance, an upright stance, when my partner's super low. He could just shoot in and tackle my legs. So to some degree, I have to match my stance to my partner's stance. Generally in jiu-jitsu, we take semi-crouch stances. So if my partner's stance is super, super low, it tells me that they're either going to be shooting in for leg tackles or they're most likely going to be pulling guard. So I should, to some degree, match my level with theirs. I should lower my eyes so that at least if they do shoot, I can down block them. if pulling guard is something that I want to do, I'm going to match my level, and we're both going to have really, really low stances, as it's likely to be a double guard pull situation. Okay. Same thing with right versus left, left versus right. So if in judo, if it's a right versus left situation, they call that kenkiatsu. We're each leading with legs that are on the same side. Okay, right versus left. Whereas if we have the same sided stance, we each have a left leg forward or we each have a right leg forward, that would be an iatsu stance. So when you come out with your partner and you're sort of assessing their level and how high they're standing, and are their arms in tight to their body? Are their arms kind of out in a weird position and they're exposed? Look for those things, but also look which foot are they putting forward, and then consider what foot you like to put forward. And you can assess, is it iatsu or kenkiatsu? This will give you more of an idea as to how turn throws are going to look, what attacks are possible. Okay, I really recommend check out Feet to Floor by John Danaher. It's a great instructional. He talks about all this stuff. Also, a really good resource would be Shintaro Higashi. He's a really great judoka from the States. And we've had him on the show in BJJ Mental Models before. His YouTube channel is awesome. If you're someone who struggles with judo, he does a lot of great explanations and grips and stances and all types of things. So check out Shintaro Higashi. Okay. Okay, so we're talking about stances. The other side of that coin that would be a great habit for a highly effective grappler would be to disrupt your partner's stance. This is maybe one of the most important habits. You know, if you go to a gym and your instructor is teaching you moves and you're learning everything in moves and sequences, I'm not going to say you can't get good, but I'm just going to say that those moves will have way less effect if you do not preface those moves by breaking your partner's stance. So what does that mean? Breaking their alignment, okay? Affect their posture, their structure, and their base. If you do this, if you break their alignment and their stance, all the moves become easier, okay? You always have to look to make your partner's stance weak and then attack. If you just try to do an arm bar on someone who has full posture and elbows in tight, it's never going to work. Okay. So I always, again, when I'm teaching beginners and kids, I try to hammer this concept home. Don't just look at your partner and try and do a move on them. Try to make their body weak. Try to think, how can I make them post their hands on the floor? If we're standing, how can I make them stumble? If I can make them take a step and stumble, it's because I off balanced them and they had to take a step to prevent falling over. Okay. And like I said, if you're on the bottom, try to always put their hands on the floor. Use the idea. This is very common in jiu-jitsu. We call it action reaction. Okay. So meaning when I create an action, I get some feedback out of it. I get a reaction. The most common situation would be like a push-pull situation. So if we're standing and I push you, most people are not going to just let you push them back. Or they're not going to let you push them backward. They're going to start pushing back into you. When you get this reaction, if you time it properly, this is a perfect time to attack when they're in the same direction that they're pushing back into you. So there's another instructional I really like. It's called Mastering Judo Combination Concepts, I believe. And it's from Shintaro Higashi. And he talks a lot about combinations in judo. And that's actually what makes throws work. I remember learning judo back in the day at this dojo, and they would teach you like a throw. So again, learning a move. Oh, here's how you do ogoshi. Here's how you do harai goshi. Okay, great. And then I'd go to Hirandori and I'd try and do the move, and it's like never would fucking happen. Okay, never would work. What you need to do is get your partner to move their energy in a particular direction. And usually this is always going to happen in the opposite direction that you create the initial reaction. So if I push into you, you push back into me. That means that I can pull and turn throw you. Or likewise, if I pull you into me and you pull away, that means that I can hit a backward throw. I can throw you in the direction that you were resisting in. Okay. Once you understand this concept, you are going to definitely be able to throw people a lot easier. And when you preface all your moves with this push-pull kind of action-reaction, where you move your partner first and then attack, you're always going to have options to attack in multiple directions. Usually they're going to be opposite directions. So if I push into you, it doesn't make any sense for you to move that way. Generally, you push back into me, right? Unless you're creating an angle and circling out. So as I push you, you push back into me, I can throw you, right? Or I pull you, you pull away, I can throw you. again, so important. This is how you're going to actually create kazushi, the idea of breaking one's balance, and then your techniques become so much more effective. That's when techniques start to feel effortless because you can time it properly. But again, we're talking about years and years of practice, but the earlier that we introduce this concept to our students, the better things get. Okay, feel your partner's weight and momentum. This is kind of like what we just talked about, the push-pull. Using your partner's weight against them is really what makes techniques effortless. It's what makes techniques easy to do. Pushing into them, they push back into you. Action, reaction, right? Always think about having a two-track mind in jiu-jitsu. There's what you want to do, and there's also what your partner wants to do. So you cannot just do a move, okay, and without understanding what your partner is doing. I'll give you a couple of analogies. One analogy would be like, okay, we're going to learn in moves. So I'm just going to memorize this move that you taught me, and I'm going to try and regurgitate it in a live situation. Okay. It's kind of like in high school where you're studying for a test, and instead of actually trying to understand the subject matter, you're just trying to literally memorize the textbook. And then you're trying to regurgitate the textbook in the lesson, but you don't actually understand it. You're just trying to regurgitate. That is not what we want, okay? We want to understand how to do the move, of course. So we need to memorize the ins and outs of the move, but now we need to be able to apply it in a live situation. And only through an actual understanding of how to break someone's balance can you make the move work in a live situation. There's no like real regurgitation of that, right? So if you're creating action, reaction, moving your partner around, that's when things start to open up. Okay. If you don't do that, it's very, very difficult to do this. So when we're creating predictable reactions in jiu-jitsu is what we're talking about. Like really think about, as I push, okay, I can expect a push to come back into me. This is incredibly important. It's a good habit to get into, is always think about predictable reactions. Jiu-jitsu is a game of systems, right? So when you're building your systems in jiu-jitsu, whether it's an arm bar or a triangle or a back control system, you have to think about mapping out your partner's like 2 or 3 main predictable reactions. Okay, we're in a system right now. What are the common reactions my partner is going to give me? I know if I have an arm bar, he's going to lock his hands, right? He might lock his hands like this, palm to palm. He might go figure 4. Okay, I know these are common reactions. I know my partner might try to come up and stack me. I know my partner might try to hitchhike. I know my partner might use a combination of multiple different escapes to get out. If I can map out these systems in my head and I know my partner's predictable reactions, it becomes a lot easier to prevent them from escaping situations, okay? Identify predictable reactions when you're building your systems, and you're going to have such better jiu-jitsu. So that habit right there that we're looking at, map out predictable reactions for everything you do. You're going to notice that it's pretty common that unless they're like brand new and they're giving you absolutely stupid reactions, that most people will have very, very common predictable reactions when you're attacking them. All right. When you know your predictable reaction, your partner's predictable reactions, you can create dilemmas, and this allows you to take control of the offensive cycle. So as you're attacking, they're starting to escape. Hey, I know what they're going to do. I can see what they're going to do. It allows you to now get ahead of the reaction and jump into the offense and stay ahead of the sequence, okay? All right. Another habit of highly effective grapplers, understand the phases of engagement. So as your partner's approaching you in the guard, okay, they want to dominate this engagement phase. And so you from the bottom also want to dominate the engagement phase. You want to get control of them with grips. You want to make connection to them and establish your guard so you can start off balancing them, okay? If they step in and start blitzing your guard before you create grips and create connection, now you're in the defensive cycle, right? You're no longer off balancing. Now you're kind of framing and trying to manage the distance. So it's so important to understand that the phase of engagement is like, that can lead down a path of defense that could be the end of the match at the end of the day. So it's so important to focus on things like hand fighting, gripping, making connection, off balancing, and keeping your partner's stance broken. Otherwise, your partner's going to come in from the top, dominate the engagement phase, start throwing your legs around, making you frame, right? You're constantly trying to get your guard back the whole time. and you never really get into the offensive cycle. You're getting exhausted. They're making you work. And then over time, it wears down. And then maybe, who knows, you give up like a chest to chest position. Now they're starting to pass your guard and things are just getting progressively worse. It all came from losing the engagement battle. So I do a lot of like video reviews, right? For my students after tournaments and stuff. I'm like, hey, send me your footage. I will do like a voiceover video and sort of see if there's anything we can just change. Like 90% of the time, if they lose, it's because they lost the engagement battle. They lost the grip fight. They lost something along the way that allowed their partner to get to a really dominant position. Usually it's in the engagement phase. Okay, so really important that you kind of build the habit of understanding like how to win the different phases of engagement, and that will allow you to control the fight, essentially. Whoever controls the grips and controls the engagement battle gets to dictate where the fight goes. In these engagements, as a general rule, make your goal to maximize your time in the offensive cycle, but minimize your time in the defensive cycle. We'll talk about defensive cycle in a second, but like in a situation where it's competitive and we want to win, our goal is to win, maximize your time in the offensive cycle where you can make your partner frame and make your partner answer your reactions. You're ahead, you're making them work, and minimize your time in the defensive cycle where you are now trying to just recover and get back to a neutral cycle. Okay. I can't stress how important this is, guys. This is a really, really important habit for effective grapplers. Okay. Also, in terms of submissions, we talked about engagement. Understand the different stages of submissions and how are you going to neutralize threats at every phase. So like armbar, for example, my partner enters the armbar. That's the first part, is the entry. So he got to the armbar, my hands are locked. Now he needs to unlock my hands. Meanwhile, he's still trying to control me. So I'm trying to get out and he's trying to control me. And then once the hands become unlocked, now he can fully extend the arm. And now we're looking at like breaking. Your arm is getting broken. We need to understand that these are different phases, right? And how are we going to prevent our partner from attacking us at each different phase? If you look at a leg lock, I think one of the biggest things that people have issues with heel hooks back before, Enter the System, John Danaher, and before we saw leg locks on a wide scale, this would have been like 10 years ago, people didn't know shit about leg locks and they didn't know when they should tap, right? They hear Joe Rogan say, oh, you're with a heel hook, you don't know what's going on, and then all of a sudden your leg's broken, right? And like all this garbage like that. Guys, if you understand the different phases of a leg lock, it will give you an idea to know like how in danger you are and when you should tap. So like different phases. And you can rearrange this in different orders. Sometimes you get the dig on the heel first. Other times you get the ashigarami first. But I'll just say like as a basic template of the order of operations for leg entanglements, usually the first one, you get caught in a leg entanglement. Your partner has your knee line. They have wedges around your knee and your hip and your ankle. And now you're in an ashigarami. Then the next thing, they start to create heel exposure. Once the heel is exposed, they get their dig. And now we're in a situation where it's like, okay, if they lock their hands, or even sometimes if they don't lock their hands, now we're looking at breaks. Okay. Now, if you know that as they're entering, you can clear your knee line, or if you can pummel 2 feet to the inside, then you've already neutralized that threat. If they manage to capture your knee line, your main priority should be hide the heel, right? Don't let them get heel exposure. Whatever that means in this situation. Maybe it means your feet cross. Maybe it means you're turning your foot down and hiding. Okay. So that would be a good defense for that as you're looking to open up the wedges and get out. Then the next thing, they get a dig on your heel. Now things are starting to get real scary. Okay. At this point, now I'm freaking out. Now I'm like, I need to get out, or I'm about to get my leg broken, or I need to tap, right? And now if they have a dig, maybe there's a chance you could do a super late stage defense, like a heel slip. You feel around, see if the heel slip's there. If the wedges are so good that the heel slip's not there and the hands are locking, just tap out. Otherwise, we're going to start eating damage, right? So when you're in a submission, doesn't matter if it's a leg lock, an arm bar, a strangle, understand the different phases of the submission that lead you into completion, right? Lead you into the finish where you finally need to tap out. If you understand these different phases, you're going to basically know when to tap, and you're going to get injured a lot less. So really, really important that we understand that. Okay, let's talk about defensive cycles. So one great habit, I think, and again, it's damaging to the ego and it kind of sucks, but it's super valuable. That's the idea of putting yourself in bad positions in training. Prioritize, if you can, being in a defensive cycle and escaping the defensive cycle back to neutral and then converting it into offense. So if you can take a defensive position, like maybe you're stuck in a bottom pin, or maybe you're stuck, someone has your back, or maybe someone has you in a submission. If you have the ability to escape a pin or a submission and then convert it into offense, that's incredibly valuable, especially to competitors, because that will give you the ability to dig yourself out of a hole and then come back potentially in a match. All right. When I'm in training, I'll allow bad positions in various stages of defenses. So pins and submissions, I'll let someone get in on my leg, or I'll let someone get in on my arm. I'll let someone take my back. I let someone pass my guard, especially when I'm working with like lower ranked people, so that they get more out of the training. Otherwise, if I'm just going like full steam ahead and I'm trying to murder like my white and my blue belts, it's like, I'm not going to lie, there is a time for that, but it doesn't really help them out too much to just be getting smashed by a black belt, right? And again, I'm not going to say there's times when I would do that, but other times where I'm just playing and I'm giving things, right? I'm giving and taking, and at the same time I get to work my defense. So it's actually a really good habit to get into. Developing like late stage defenses, it really increases your confidence. This is something Danaher talks about a lot. Increases your confidence and the faith in your own defensive ability. So if you get caught in a pin or a submission, that, hey, like I know I can get out, right? It comes with knowledge and it comes with time, and honestly, a lot of tapping, especially when you're defending like joint locks and things like that. If you really want to let your partner get in on some late stages, expect to tap out, at least for a while before you really dial in your defenses. You're going to be tapping a lot, but that's okay. That's the point of training. We have to differentiate between practice performance and competition performance. Okay. Competition performance, I don't want to let my partner have my fucking leg and heel hook me or arm bar me and unlock my hands. I don't want to do that before I start defending. But in the gym, I might say to myself, okay, today I'm going to go into the gym and I'm going to let my partner fully extend my arm, and I'm going to see if I can like turn my arm in such a way that they can't arm bar me. Of course, with training partners you trust. Or say to yourself, okay, I'm going to let someone pass my guard into side control, fully cross-faced and underhook, and I'm going to work my way out. Like set little small goals that way, and then put yourself in these shitty positions, especially if you're training with lower ranked people. They will learn what it's like to get deep into the offensive cycle and try and finish you. And you can learn what it's like to get into bad positions and get out, because you could be a really, really good jiu-jitsu fighter, but if you don't do this, you're not putting yourself in these bad positions in training. And the result is going to be, if you get put in a bad position and when it really matters in a competition, let's say, you won't be able to get out because you haven't put in the reps to get out under these situations. I would say like the inability to take a defensive cycle or escape a bad position and convert it to offense is one of the main reasons why people can't come back from matches when they're down and they lose, right? So if keep in mind, especially when IBJJF rule set, I mean, this is a rule set where people will get up one advantage and literally just try and play not to lose the rest of the match. So they might get to like an advantage for passing your guard, you recover, they get an advantage, and now they're playing just to shut you down, right? That's how a lot of these guys win under that rule set. At that stage, not a lot of guys go out there and risk a lot so that they can get a submission, right? Unless you're like a Miragali, you're really hunting for the submission the entire time. A lot of guys just like to play from a position of being ahead on the scoreboard and play not to lose. So really make sure that you put in the time in defensive cycles in practice, and you have the ability to dig yourself out of defensive cycles and get into offensive cycles. All right, here's another really good. It's a really good habit for people to get into, and that's the idea of kind of using fatigue as a weapon. Okay, this is a really cool concept. I actually didn't use this a lot because I was never really like a top player throughout the colored belts. I was more of a guard player, but now my game is totally shifted. Now I want to be on top. I want to use pressure over time. I want to wear my partner down and break them down. So reading your opponent's body language can really give you an idea of how they're feeling. So when you're applying pressure and you're breaking your partner down, you can use fatigue over time, and you can sort of look at their body position, their language of their body, listen to their breathing. Look at their facial expressions. Are they stressed out, or are they just cruising? Usually I like to keep a calm facial expression. But yeah, like I said, even things like listening to their breath, this gives you cues about whether or not you are in the offensive cycle. So if you can get these cues and sort of see if your opponent's breaking, this is generally the time to increase the pace. You're increasing the tempo, you're coming harder and harder, and this, you seeing your partner break in front of you, a lot of the time what that does, it kind of gives you confidence and energy to move forward, right? And you see that your partner's starting to break and they're fading away. Or if your partner lets out a big like after you pass their guard, you're like, oh, okay, I got this guy. Like he's already defeated. And that's really, really important that we play this game where we're monitoring our partner. We have that 2-track mind where it's not just what I want to do. It's what does my partner want here? If you have your partner in a deep cycle of defense, quite honestly, all they want is to get to a position where they can rest, a neutral position. So if you even let them recover a little bit, like maybe they get their half guard back, but you're still chest to chest, we can just use that position to pass the guard again because we're already chest to chest. And that's when you're going to hear a lot of sighing and a lot of breathing and really see, like, is my opponent struggling? Are they feeling a lack of confidence and in what they're able to do to you? And are they getting exhausted? If this is the case, man, start taking over the match. This is the time to increase the pace, take the match to them, finish the fight, or just dominate them and hold them in positions until the fight's over, right? And recognizing these cues will really pay off in the long run. Okay, here's a really important habit. Basically, every Gordon and Danaher instructional involves this, and that's fighting for the inside position. So inside position, if you're in top position, means like punching underhooks or getting bicep ties, getting your limbs inside your partner's limbs so you can get to a chest-to-chest position. On the flip side, if you're on the bottom and you're trying to retain your guard, you want to manage the distance by dominating the inside space with your frames. If you teach your students to fight for the inside position, their no-gi game is going to get way better, okay? Now, I will say this. In the gi, inside position, I feel, I'm not going to say it doesn't exist because obviously frames exist in the gi, but it's not as important. One thing I've been studying a lot right now is the long step pass from Tynan. That's Tynan Dalpra. That's been kind of like one of my main focuses right now when I'm rebuilding my gi game is looking at how does he play on top. And he takes a collar grip, and then his other hand is sort of blocking the legs after he does the long step. So that collar grip, it doesn't really matter if the guy has frames pushing you away. His hands are on the inside position, and your collar grip is on the outside. You can pull yourself in with that collar grip. So I'm not going to say inside position doesn't exist in the gi, but I will say that outside positions like a collar grip around the outside or even like a Delahiva hook instead of an Ashigarami, like an outside guard, is much more applicable in the gi because you can control your partner's body through the gi. So in a no-gi situation, if I don't have inside position, if I don't have like an underhook or something and your frames are all on the inside, I can't control you. I can't just grab your head and expect to control you. Now, that being said, there are exceptions. Like, let's say I do a body lock pass. You have 2 feet to the inside. You have everything inside. I managed to get my hands locked around you. I can sprawl past your hooks and force half guards and things like that. But as a general rule, fighting for the inside position when you're on top or bottom is going to dictate who wins that exchange. For the most part, inside position, it occurs at the upper body and the lower body. So lower body, we're pummeling feet to the inside, dominating the space between our partner's knees. And at the upper body, we're punching underhooks and getting bicep ties, trying to get our frames inside our partner's frames, okay? This is going to allow you from the top to really immobilize your opponent. A lot of people, the old cliche, when you talk to a gi guy about doing no-gi, they're like, oh, it's so scrambly and it's so athletic. And I have no grips. It's impossible to control someone. And it's like, you're just not fighting for inside position. You need to make sure that you're getting your underhooks in and that you're actually getting your frames inside your partner's frames. It has nothing to do with well, I'm not gonna say nothing to do with it, but it has little to do with who's more athletic or who scrambles, but rather who can pummel to the inside position and dominate the inside position more. That's going to prevent you from getting pinned, and that's going to prevent you from getting your guard passed. And from the top position, that's going to allow you access to actually immobilize someone and get chest to chest for long periods of time. All right. Here's another great habit. Always consider the position of your head. So from the top position, from the bottom position, your head position is super important. If your head is far away from your partner, they're always going to be able to bring frames back to the inside. If you're passing, your head is really low on your partner's shoulder or on their chest, now you're so close to them, you've taken away space that's very hard for them to manage the distance. So when I'm passing the guard, one of the main things I always think about is my head position. Can I put my head position on my partner's chest or stomach or whatever? It depends what I'm doing. And use your head as a weapon. Use it as a post or as a frame, right? Good head position is super related to good guard passing. And also you can generate base from the top position with your head. Sometimes your head is a post on the floor. Sometimes your head is a frame, wedging your partner's head in place. Your head can do a lot of different things. So you think of your head as an extra weapon or an extra tool, right? Like I said, going into like long step passes, tripod passes, you can take away space by using your head and close out certain guard pass positions just because of your head position. Here's another great habit that you want to get into. Okay, you don't want to be obnoxious with this habit, but it is something you want to think about, and that's the idea of asking questions. Guys, so many times I ask people after I show a technique, hey, does anyone have questions? No one says a word, right? No one wants to pipe up. They don't want to be that person in class who's like asking questions. And then as soon as we go, okay, 1, 2, we clap and it's time to do the technique, I have 2 people come up. They're like, hey, I have a question. I'm like, why the fuck didn't you ask this question a second ago? Like, are you afraid that other people are going to hear what you don't know? Are you, like what makes you more special than someone else? Ask the question in front of everyone. That way, everyone gets to learn. I'm sure there's people who have the same question as you, right? So don't be afraid to ask questions. You aren't the only one with questions. I love questions. For me, when someone asks a question, it's a chance to actually like prove to myself, do I actually understand the position? Because if they ask a question that I haven't explained, now I have to look at the problem and solve it. I have to say to myself, okay, like, do I really know what I'm talking about? If I don't know what I'm talking about, if I don't have an answer, I just say, honestly, I don't know. I'll get back to you. Okay. Don't pretend as the instructor that you know the answer to everything. Okay. You're not an encyclopedia. You're not a John Danaher. You're not always going to know all the answers, and that's okay. And it's okay to show your students you don't know all the answers. Okay. It's rare that it happens, but I have done it before. I don't know. I don't know that answer. I wish I could tell you. I don't know. Asking questions doesn't make you look stupid. Okay. But also within reason, don't ask fucking stupid questions. Don't ask silly questions. Don't ask questions that, could be answered with a little bit of research. Don't ask questions if they're unrelated to the material unless, it makes sense to do that. Like you do have to some degree, like sort of ask yourself, is this question a good question to ask? But most of the time it's not, and if you're new and it is a dumb question, understand that is okay to ask because that's why we're here. We're here to learn, and it doesn't make you stupid to ask. Asking questions shows that you're trying to learn. But again, I would say before asking a question, try to see if you can answer it yourself, right? Don't just like want to get spoon-fed by your instructor, but test yourself. Could I answer this question by myself, right? Maybe there is a way that you can come to your own conclusion or your own answer, and then you maybe want to ask your professor after and see what they say, right? So asking a lot of questions, I find, is a good thing. And I tend to find that it's always the same people who ask questions. Like most of the room don't ask questions, and then there'll be a couple of guys who like consistently ask questions, okay? And to me, as the instructor, I look at that like, oh, that person actually cares. That person actually wants to learn. And they're not afraid that everyone knows that they don't know everything, which is, I think, a healthy attitude in the training room. Okay, show up to training. This one is a great habit, obviously. Guys, consistency is key, especially in a skill like jiu-jitsu. People always say, oh, how often should I train? Or how often? I'm like, I don't know. Fuck. How often should you train? Some people train 6 days, 7 days a week. Some people train, 9 days a week. Some people train 3 days a week. Like, how often should you train? I don't know. It's different for everyone else. It's different depending on your talent level. It's different depending on your age and your ability to train. It's different on your goals. Maybe your goal is to become a world champion. You should probably be training almost every day, multiple times a day sometimes. If you're completely recreational, try to train as often as you can, 3-4 times a week. I don't know. Whatever's available for you in your life. Some people are like, oh, how many days a week should I train if I want to get a black belt in 10 years? And I'm like, I don't fucking know, dude. Like, everyone's talented at a different level. Everyone is capable of different things. I would say in 10 years, you should probably be training at least 4 days a week if you expect to get a black belt in 10 years, right? If your instructor has good standards, right? Another thing would be, does your gym base their promotions on merit, or do they base it on visits? You know, if you train at a particular gym and they have like a punch card and you sign in and you do your 40 visits and you get your stripe, and I've been at gyms like this, then merit doesn't really matter too much. You can just show up and get your visits, and so there's really no answer. Train as much as you possibly can without getting burned out, and just try to stay consistent on the mats. That's the best thing you can do. Also, the other side of that, showing up to training, know when it's smart to stay away. So when you need to recover, when you're sick, when your body is breaking down and you feel like you're burnt out, take a break. That's fine. Take a break, take a step back, let your body and your mind get hungry for jiu-jitsu again. Okay, next habit, don't complain. BJJ is hard. It's not for everyone. Guys, when you go to jiu-jitsu school, understand that it's different from other martial arts. Okay, other martial arts, you'll be doing katas, patterns, punching boards and things like this. In BJJ, your partners are trying to fuck you up. They're trying to submit you, make you quit, strangle you. It's hard. It's not for everyone. Okay, the GB saying, they say, jiu-jitsu's for everyone. It's not for everyone. Okay, not everyone wants to do it. Not everyone can put in 10 years on the mats of getting smashed and getting their face scratched and roughed up by the gi and strangled and getting, joints popped and things like that. Not everyone can do that. And that's okay. When you go to jiu-jitsu, understand that you're undergoing something that is going to come with a lot of struggle. It's going to be difficult. It's going to test you in a lot of different ways. It's going to be uncomfortable a lot. Okay. If you're struggling, honestly, nobody really cares. That's the truth. They're all struggling. Everyone is struggling. You have to embrace the struggle and the difficulty of jiu-jitsu when you decide, okay, I'm going to make a commitment to this. I want to come up through the ranks. I want to be proficient in this. It's like, okay, do you want to be proficient in this, or are you willing to sacrifice what it takes to become proficient in this, right? That's the real question. Are you willing to go through the ups and the downs, the injuries, the tough training sessions? Can you go through that many, many times consistently over time? And then one day you get your black belt, right? Or one day you win that tournament you really wanted to win. If you complain about it and make a fit when things don't go your way, I mean, what can I tell you? This is not the place. This is not the sport for you. This is hard. There are recreational gyms that the training is much easier, and you're probably better suited for that. Okay. In my opinion, nothing worth doing is ever easy. So when you go to a jiu-jitsu school and you're complaining, oh my God, this, that, it's like, yeah, you're in the wrong sport. All this does is make you look like you're weak. And that's okay. Just understand that maybe this training isn't for you, and maybe you need more of a recreational training experience or an activity that is not so hard on the body. Okay, I'm not trying to be like tough or anything, but this is just the reality of the sport. It's very, very difficult, and know what you're getting into when you sign up. You're either going to love it and be like, man, this is so hard, I love it. Or you're going to be like, this is really uncomfortable and it's making me uncomfortable and it's stressing me out, and I don't like going to training. If that's the case, that's okay. Just don't go. Okay, do something else. All right, another great habit. This one's very important. We're starting to talk about like mental training now. Think about jiu-jitsu outside of class. So when you're done your class, that doesn't necessarily mean your training's over. Okay, a lot of people leave the gym and they turn their brain off. They go home and watch TV or whatever, go to bed. Try to think about jiu-jitsu outside of class time. Prioritize mental training. So The physical training in the gym, yes, that's important. We want to learn the techniques that our instructor shows us, etc. But at the same time, think about mental training when you're away from the gym. Maybe you're at work and your mind can wander, or maybe you're driving to and from the gym and you're just recalling what happened in the training room. What were the things that you thought were really good in the training room, and what were things that did not go very well in the training room? And the more you think about it, honestly, you can progress quite a bit just by thinking about jiu-jitsu. Okay. Nowadays there's so many resources for jiu-jitsu, free resources. There's premium resources, right? Like YouTube is free, but then there's more premium resources like online academies and flow grappling, which I absolutely hate. Flow grappling. They have the best jiu-jitsu events, but at the same time, they are so bad for putting ads in their paid content. But anyways, we want to get access to the competitions and stuff. You got to get flow grappling. And of course, on social media, Instagram is free. There's tons of free content out there just for everyone who's willing to watch it. So try to just commit yourself to watching this content, even if you don't have money to spend on it. Just watch Instagram, just watch YouTube, watch TikTok, right? There's all types of videos that you can get and just get ideas and think about jiu-jitsu. And that is really, really, really important. Like, never accept that your level of knowledge is sufficient, right? Use the scientific method and always test yourself. Always say, okay, like, do I know this? Is this the best way? What if I applied that move to this situation? Would my answer change? I always, even moves that I've done for, over a decade, like a Kimura, like one of my favorite moves, right? Never be afraid to try and learn more about that move. Never just think to yourself, like, I know all there is that I need to know about that move. That is not a Kaizen mindset, right? Kaizen mindset it's the constant improvement of systems over time. So as time goes on, you're just on a trajectory of improvement through Kaizen mindset in every aspect of life, but especially in jiu-jitsu, right? Like, your jiu-jitsu should never stay still. I always see old black belts who are kind of like, okay, I'm a black belt now. I don't really need to learn anything else. They kind of lose their drive to learn more and more. That's a good way to get fucked up by junior ranks, especially as you get older. Like, you have to stay ahead. You have to have that Kaizen mindset and just never accept that you know everything. You don't. I don't know everything. John Danaher doesn't know everything, even though he knows much more than anyone else, for the most part. Always be on the hunt for more knowledge and mental study. Pay attention to the fine details. So, like, details and context are a major part of learning techniques. Earlier, we talked about predictable reactions when you're building systems. That is super valuable stuff. When you're watching a technique, think about all the details that you're seeing. You're not going to be able to memorize all of these details, at least on the first time. So I try to have a photographic memory when I'm watching an instructional. I'm trying to take everything in, but every time you come back to that instructional, if you can sit through it again, you're going to learn another layer of details that your brain kind of forgot the first time you watched it. So maybe you watch, Tynan Dalpra's long step pass. And then from there, you go and try it in the gym. Okay, you're having some success with it, things are working. Then go back and watch it again. And now you already have felt it. You've felt it against resistance. You know what it is like. You can see what works and what doesn't. And now you're going to learn even more details on top of what you already know. So you're like layering in the details. I think it's really, really important to think like this. Okay. Really think about what details work, and also analyze when you're watching, like, let's say an instructional, and you're sort of filing the information you're seeing on the screen. You're trying to file it away in your head in a way that you can recall it when it matters and that you remember as many details as possible. Try to recognize the patterns within that system. So again, I'll use the instructional I'm watching right now, the long step. Once Tynan Dalpra gets to the long step, the finishing position is almost the same for all of the techniques. He does the long step, which is the movement is exact same for all the positions. And then he tripods up and he finishes from the tripod. Okay. But it starts with a different move every time. So he shows the mechanics of the move. And then once he gets that, he starts to apply it to different situations. So it'll be long step with a lasso, long step with reverse De La Hiva, long step from the leg smash, long step from the De La Hiva guard, but it's all the same finish. So once you realize, okay, the pattern doesn't change, it's just this part that changes, things become a lot more easy to memorize. once you can kind of once you can learn the pattern behind things, you kind of decode it and you make it much more easy to digest and to recall in live training. Oh yeah, and always learn from your mistakes. This could mean many different things. In a competition, if you fuck up, go like, why did you fuck up? Did you lose in the engagement phase and that led you down a cycle of a defense where you could never recover? Was it the grip fighting that sort of actually led to the issues? Why did you lose that competition? Learn from that. Or in training, like I said, on your way home, think about training, think about what went right, what went wrong, and think, how can I learn from what went wrong? Like, when you start to have an analytical mind like that in jiu-jitsu, that's when you can really improve. Or even like injuries. I spoke on an episode recently about injuries. I hurt myself by trying to do moves on people that are either wrong or done at the wrong time. One example was an armbar that I tried to hit on a person from Turtle, and I didn't have any base, and I just fell over and landed right on my shoulder and separated my shoulder. This was back when I was like a blue or a purple belt. I learned from that. I learned that I got to be super careful if I'm going to do that move, and I always need to have base, right? So usually when I get injured, that's when I learn the most. I'm like, oh, I'll never do that again, or I'll try to avoid that situation again because there was such a big consequence to that mistake, and it was an injury, okay? Here's a great habit. Be critical of yourself. Identify your weaknesses. This will allow you to grow and improve, okay? Don't feed your ego. Be totally honest with yourself. I'm not good at this. I need to improve at this. Okay, I know my gi game needs work. I need to rebuild my gi game. Let's not beat around the bush about it at all. Let's fucking attack that head on, come up with a plan, and see if we can, in time, create some measurable improvements. Don't hate yourself for your failures, okay? Like, look at them as learning opportunities and embrace the process of learning. Be patient. This is a long game. Jiu-jitsu is a long journey. It's like decades long until you're an old man and you can't compete or can't train anymore. Be patient and take the time to learn your mistakes. Don't get pissed off if you can't fix those problems today or tomorrow or next week or next month. Sometimes these things take years or a chunk of months before you can actually measure improvement. So be critical and embrace the process and be patient and play the long game. All right, here's another great habit. Understand your body type. If you do this, you're going to understand what works for you and what doesn't work for you. I try to always teach jiu-jitsu that is universal to everyone in the room. But that being said, not everyone can do the moves that I do, and I can't do the moves that other people do. Okay? Everyone's got a different body type. Your body type quite often will dictate what techniques you gravitate towards more than others. So that's okay, but just understand your limitations and understand your strengths. If you're not an overly flexible person, you're probably not going to be doing barambolos. If you have a big midsection and you're kind of fat, you're probably not going to be going upside down or doing triangles or things like that. Once you can identify your strengths and weaknesses through your body type, you will be able to have a clearer idea as to what techniques you should use and what techniques probably aren't going to work for you. All right. Consider how your specific body type will be affected when you're grappling with people with other body types, right? So if you're short and stubby and you're going against someone who's long and lanky, understand the differences between that, right? It's going to be different than if you're fighting another short and stubby guy. Right? Think about body types and how you got to play the range differently when someone's got longer limbs or shorter limbs, etc. Okay, this one is super important. This is something that I didn't think about when I was in my 20s when I first started. I was just trying to submit everyone and trying to have the best practice performance I could possibly have, and probably being kind of a bad training partner as I was doing it. But think about prioritizing longevity. So now that I'm 35, longevity is a huge thing for me, especially going through 2 knee surgeries and a bunch of other injuries. Longevity is so important because as you age, your body becomes less robust. It heals slower. Your cartilage gets brittler. You get less flexible. Things start to happen to your body, especially after like 30, 35. So prioritize longevity and invest in your body by doing like things like prehab and things like that. Really develop your skills. Have a game based around skills and technique instead of a game that's based around playing to your attributes like speed and strength and flexibility and youth. So, because really the less injured you are, the more you can train, if you think about it, right? You don't want to be blowing your knee out. Now you got to take a year off in your prime and you're wasting all that time. And now all you can do is mentally study. Mental study is great, but it's not a substitute for physical study, if we're being totally honest. So make sure that you're really focusing on how can you prevent injuries. And I would say if you are a real competitive athlete, or if you are like even 25 or 30 up, you have to start doing training outside of jiu-jitsu. You have to do prehab and strength and conditioning and mobility and things like that, at least to some degree. Even if it's 1 day a week, it's better than nothing. Especially the joints of create a regular prehab routine, I would say weekly, but really think about your joints, like your knees, your shoulders, your neck, your back, your hips. These are all things that you want to make sure are sort of gelling in. I even recommend, especially if you're a professional athlete, you kind of should do this anyways, but like if you're super consistent and jiu-jitsu is very important to you, you should be seeing a physiotherapist or a sports physiotherapist who's like really good on a regular basis, because I guarantee you will get value out of that. I see a physiotherapist every month or every 2 months. It's totally worth it. Okay. It's very, very important to have a professional in your life who can help you with imbalances and injury prevention or recovering from injuries, and get their professional opinion. So invest in your body, and look at your body as an investment, right? Play the long game. Understand that as you get older, your jiu-jitsu is likely to change, right? And that's why it's so important to build a skill-based game and to put time into keeping your body healthy and running well. Okay? So that is the episode today. Guys, if there are other habits that you know of that you can think of for highly successful grapplers, leave them in the comments. I want to hear about them. I look at the comments, okay? I don't respond to every comment because a lot of you guys are... can be snobby, especially the ecological approach guys, but leave comments. If you guys have other things that you think help successful grapplers, or things that you do that improve your jiu-jitsu or your study of jiu-jitsu, I want to hear about it. Please leave it down there. Other than that, please like, share, subscribe to the show. Support the show by subscribing to my online academy. It's $10 a month. That's 2 Starbucks coffees. Guys, right now, if you like this show, there's no Patreon that you can go to support this. I don't have an account like that. The best way you can support the show is subscribe to my online academy if you like this content. I also have a kids book. Check it out, Zara Can Do Jiu-Jitsu. All the links for contacts and supporting the show are in the bottom. But I really appreciate you listening to me today. I'm going to take off now, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Remember, the Essential Jiu-Jitsu Podcast is everything you need to know about jiu-jitsu. Take care, you guys. Bye.